If your profession issue, it's very difficult for you to let go. And then you would
Huh?
immediately say, okay, perhaps that is less quality. But it could also be that because of your perfectionism, you don't see that it's being delivered in a different way. And you say, and if we just now segue this into how people look at diversity, this is also a way how people need to look at that there are different talents and different approaches to things, but it doesn't mean that it's not perfect because it's not your level of perfection.
Welcome to Women Disrupting Tech. My name is Dirk-Jan Hupkes, and on this podcast I give the women who work in tech the platform they need to inspire and empower each other. Join me on a journey into the world of entrepreneurship, funding, biases and role models to discover the strategies for success in the tech industry. In other words, how women can disrupt tech. Are you ready to listen? Hey, welcome back to Women Disrupting Tech, and thank you for tuning in to episode 115. Would you start a business in the middle of a crisis? That's exactly what Marleen Somohardjo did during the financial crash of 2008. While many companies were scaling back, laying off people, she stepped forward. And by doing so, she discovered that resilience is not something you switch on when times get tough. It's a daily discipline. Today, Marleen is the founder of M2 Advisory. She helps companies prepare for uncertainty and build stable foundations for growth. In this episode of Women Disrupting Tech, Marleen explains why profit without purpose is fragile, how financial preparedness creates freedom, and why you should design a business that lets you enjoy life now, not just when you retire. In the end, this episode is not just about numbers, it's about strategy, about risk management, and about the personal choices that shape lasting success. So, when you're ready to listen and learn how to build a resilient and purpose driven business, please welcome to Women Disrupting Tech, Marleen Somohardjo. Marleen Somohardjo, welcome to Women Disrupting Tech. Good to have you. A question I always ask at the start is how you got into your current job at M2 Advisory.
Oh, thank you, Dirk-Jan. Thank you for having me. Well, yeah, I started my career at KPMG when I graduated from the Erasmus University in Rotterdam as a business
Hmm.
economic. And I started my career as a business advisor. But I always had my idea that I wanted to start my own business, my own management consultancy. However, it was a very good idea to start within a big corporate, delivering big programs and just also working in a certain framework that was very attractive to me. And it really honed in into my skills, management consultancy skills, working for big companies. And just it was a very good starting point within my career. But then at some point, I just wanted to start it and do it by myself. So I left KPMG in 2008 during the financial crisis within the financial sector, but started my first assignment in that during that period. So I embarked that entrepreneurial journey.
Hmm.
Just see how much it was like a extension of my personality. See how resilient I could be, how I could build my and launch my own company in this. But with a very clear focus in the sense that I wanted to deliver a more end-to-end value proposition. And that I missed a little bit working at KPMG. It was a perfect environment. It just had the structures and the frameworks and also the type of advising was very exciting. It was amazing to be part of it. However, I missed the element that was just very much focused because it was very isolated within an environment and not taking the entire business dynamics into consideration. And that was something that I really wanted to bring to the table to my clients. So that is the reason why I just totally focused on saying, okay, I want to build this for myself. And so I
Okay.
started that. And after that, I started M2 Advisory because M2 Advisory is it's more focused on delivering the same mission that I have, but then from a different perspective. It's more that now it's a movement to bring people and helping them in financial stability with frameworks that we can help them and bring clarity, much more clarity in a complex environment. So it's not more that the very consultancy one-on-one, but it's just more in a broader view, or helping people to train their people or and bring them to a next level, not being dependent on hiring external
Uh-huh.
resources, but just being able to totally focus on their own capabilities and working with a framework that helps them bring them to a next level and sustain in financial stability. So this is what
Okay,
that is my current role within advisory.
cool. And how was it to start? Because you started or you started working for yourself as a solo consultant in the financial crisis. How was that? Because there was a
That
lot of, yeah, it was a pretty turbulent time, let's say.
And that was exactly the point. That was just like, and the macroeconomics were definitely
Yeah.
not favorable. But then the chaos, or just saying it wasn't even chaos. It was more like, what is the preparedness or the readiness to deal with such big events.
Uh-huh.
That was definitely something that was very apparent in within the settings that I was working. So what
Uh-huh.
happened, and that was also the reason that I was felt comfortable and confident to start my business, because I was working for a big insurance company, and they wanted to have their central unit taken to a more decentral program management office. And from that perspective, they requested me to do this. For them, it was a very strategical move, saying, "Hey, taking everything more from a central to a more decentral perspective."
Uh-huh.
And that for me gave me the opportunity to build on my starting building on my network and continue working on delivering and launching my own business. So it was like simultaneously it happened. But yeah, the macroeconomic events, as I mentioned in the beginning, was really impacting in every
Yeah.
level. It just cascaded it in businesses, but also in personal lives. So it felt a bit comfortable in the sense that you were seeing that people were being laid off, and on the other hand, I was being hired to help bringing the business back to a level that it was for them having the feeling to be in control,
Yeah.
and just maintaining whatever they were doing within their sector, and helping people working alongside. But there was also a downside, and that was that people were just getting fired, or being put in positions that they needed to pivot their lives.
How was that for you to make that pivot? What impact did it have? Positive or negative?
Every element has this negative side, but for me personally, like I said, it just was I had my opportunity to show my personality in a different way, and really helping a company bringing their very essential question: how can we reduce costs, and how can we bring a more efficient way of working within our business unit. So that was a very good side, but just talking to people that you have been seen, or even on the program that were taken off the program because of there was no and they needed to be replaced, or there was this from a cost containment perspective, they were not available or not needed anymore. That was
Uh-huh.
hard to see. That's definitely not something that is nice, or it impacts you, especially when you're in bed. I just really feel, and I want to see everyone thrive in a certain way. But yeah, this was also part of their journey. So yeah, that was not a very nice way. But yeah, at the end of the day, we just focused on delivering, and we focused on creating something that was manageable and working for everyone. So that was the better side.
Did you feel that the company that you worked for was prepared for what they were doing? Or that they were just taking measures because they felt like, okay, we now have to act because we need to cut cost?
That's a very good question. At hindsight, I think they were not very much prepared. So, and this is what you unfortunately see with every big business, is that they are just they have the volume, they're in the business life cycle, that they're not very much affected by macroeconomic events. But it was as just such a big scale,
Yeah.
and especially to the extent in the financial sector, that they also needed to be more compliant in a different way, and also having their reserves and their financial stability being challenged that
Mhm.
put them in a position to say, "Oh, but this is what you see." But then it puts people in a position that they think, okay, we need to reduce costs and we need to have different cost structures. Well,
Mhm.
I'm now preaching and saying, okay, if you already have seen this before, have like a very clear strategy and financial and very clear financial objective, you would have already been prepared to an extent that if the markets change, that you're prepared to and to respond to that in a more adequately or a more appropriate manner than just like only working with headcounts or had taking out core essentials out of or core competence out of your business, because that is also what you see is that people are just like in stress taking out core elements that they could easily have redesigned to a better level, but now they
Mhm.
totally have taken it out of the business and then they need to redesign or reinvent it like in a new manner that just gives them an opportunity that it just creates more distance to the market.
Yeah. How can companies prepare for that? Is that because Shell, for instance, is known that they do a lot of strategy and or sorry scenario testing? Is that part of being prepared?
It's definitely a good way of testing and being prepared. It also has to do with how do you want to position yourself within the market. So yeah, if you see financial institutions work with stress testing, they work with opportunities, or but there's always
Yeah,
a
but
level
the stress testing only came up especially on the insurance side because I've been in the implementation of Solvency II in the aftermath of the financial crisis. The stress testing only started
after.
after the financial crisis because regulators said, well, maybe we need to do some stress testing on the insurance side too, because banks were sort of subjected to it. Not really, but to the level that they should have, but at least they were subjected to it. But for the insurance companies, it was totally new.
So it had just being part of also I've also been part of solvency programs. Yeah, it was like a requirement having
Hmm.
all your pillars in place. And if you would compare that, for example, how you mentioned saying for a Shell, Shell is much more prepared in the sense that they have risk management or working from an operational risk management point of view more embedded within their businesses. So while you've seen that financial institution have risk management working and using it more to be more profitable within other sectors, risk management is more from an operational point of view, but giving them the opportunity to understand their business much better and be prepared and mitigate risk in a much better way or a much effective way then you would see if it were yeah, if it
Yeah. Is that also the key to the shift that especially financial institutions need to make? Like shifting from looking at it from a profit and loss perspective to really embedding it in the operation?
I think that will be a much better way to understand that they're not becoming obsolete because hey, if you
Yeah.
look at it from a life cycle business perspective, there is no urgency being the biggest, having already your market position. But now coming to in a situation that the market is requesting other elements and the events are much broader, let's say the geopolitical issues, for example, or the trade war that we have right now is just those are elements, or it started, for example, with Corona, it's just COVID. Of course, we had mortality risk indicators, but did we had pandemics? Not to that extent. So we're learning, we're evolving, but it also means that we need to change our way of thinking and our way of doing and approaching markets, not from the perspective of that how we're the biggest and we're the best, but just now being more integrated within the community or within the market and seeing that it helps that you're have a much more effective strategy and a much more market fit when you're take into consideration that you need to prepare for certain elements and you need to build your core competence around that and not being like a secondary opportunity or secondary competence that facilitates, but it needs to be built and be like your core competence. And from there on, it should be the most, hey, you bring the most value and the most efficient and effective process from your perspective, but also from the client perspective.
I was wondering, you have this M2 framework at M2 Advisory. Can you describe the core components of it and how it helps company be more prepared and financially resilient?
The framework has a methodology, and the methodology is around assessing and improving and measuring. So those are the
Uh-huh.
reports that it will bring you. But if you just look at the core competencies built on certain pillars. So
Hmm.
to my and it works on the intersection of finance, leadership, and technology. So when you look at your core competence and you have the framework in have such a way that it just measures you to what extent are your is your maturity level, and then it
Hmm.
helps you provide a certain insight in how you need to create or project your financial goals, how you need to improve or at least be more responsive and take responsive leadership, and also how is your technology facilitating in this aspect, and not technology in a sense from being very innovative, but it could also be like technology how it facilitates your business to a better level, or even going back to the financial institutions having their legacies, and working in that way in a much more flexible and agile way. So it gives it gives business the opportunity to understand from their own perspective. So I find that that is the key. It should be from their own perspective and not just like, of course, the framework gives you a challenge and a push, but it needs to be embedded within the business. Understanding that there's a very a clear correlation between what you have as your finance strategy, what then your leadership approaches toward that, and how it's impacted within your technology, saying, hey, your total environment from your processes to operations, for example.
Okay.
So these are
Uh,
the core competence.
okay. So there's leadership, there's technology, and there's strategy.
Finance strategy.
Finance, finance
Yes.
strategy. Okay, so maybe also good to go a bit more deep into the finance strategy part because you talked a bit about the technology side of it and that it's not, let's say, being the newest and the most innovative of everyone, but to make sure that you manage your tech stack in a way that it actually enables you to execute. So maybe also good to then shift a bit to the financial part of it. How does your framework help companies, yeah, be financially resilient?
That's a good question. So, like I said in the beginning, it's my mission that business understand that in a certain way, your finance strategy helps you to create an infrastructure that builds on financial structures, that builds on stability, that builds on a certain financial wealth or freedom, and that gives you, when you understand that your financial objectives are very much related to what you want to bring into the world, into the market. So I call it, how do you convert your assets? For example, if you're building a podcast, for example, what is your asset and how do you convert that into something that is financial viable?
Yeah.
Well, um, it starts with you defining, saying, okay, these are my objectives for a longer period over time. And then I break
Uh,
it down and just bring it to a strategy that helps me deliver these elements or have being presented. So for me, it is all about having your metrics that you can measure whether you're on track or whether
uh,
your financial strategy is effective or not, but not from a backward looking. So people would say, for example, okay, but you have your year-end results. How about that? Yeah, that's true. You need to be compliant. You need to have your reporting. But what happens during that period? That is
uh,
always backward-looking environment. What you want to have is that you want to have a strategy that's very much focused to what you want to bring to the market and very much connected with everything that is financially entangled within your business, so that you have
yeah.
the right data to make the right decisions, and being very confident in the decisions that you make from having the opportunity being financial stable, because obviously you can take risk, but the core competence needs to be that your balance sheet is very stable, and from there on you can build on your whatever your strategy is, either a growth strategy or an innovative strategy. or just maintaining the business.
Uh-huh.
Finance is your, yeah, is your basic, your fundamentals to start with. And what you quite often see is that people are very passionate about what they want to do in their business,
Yeah.
and then we just talk about the entrepreneurs, not the financial institutions or such. But when we look at entrepreneurs, they are very passionate on what they're doing, but they just have no clue how they can use and work with finance to help them take their business to a next level.
Yeah. And I think that's also where let's say this podcast then sort of meets them too, in the sense that it's actually also enabling entrepreneurs to be their best selves and to utilize also the financial part. Because to your point, I do recognize a bit that I am very passionate about the podcast as a product. The financial side is still underdeveloped. Yes, there is, of course, the your basic reporting on metrics with regards to the product, i.e., the podcast. But on the financial level, there's nothing really big there yet.
Sorry to interrupt. I think it's very important for you to understand that your passion needs to be monetized in such a way that you understand what is the value of bringing to the market.
Uh-huh.
And from there on, you start building on your financial. So your financial strategy would obviously be not as extended as it would be for a financial institution. But the main focus here should be I'm delivering something, and how can
Uh-huh.
I make this more sustainable? And what is the business model behind this that
Uh-huh.
caters to my personal need, but also bring value to the customers in this? So it starts with that, just really understanding that there's a level of uh, and from there on, the opportunities rises in the sense, for example, would you want to work with investors, or do you want to have build partnerships, or do you want to? And it just gives you the opportunities to work with. I call them financial instruments to build on a solid balance sheet.
Okay. We talked a bit about, or we talked quite lengthy already about why it's necessary to be prepared, why it's also good to be financially prepared, to have a good, sound business model, and also to keep track of how technology is playing into that. For you personally, so are there any systems and habits and preparations that you use personally as an entrepreneur to be prepared for your own company?
Yeah. So when you're growing your business or when you're working in within your business, it's just there's this, like I said, you're driven by your passion, but it just also means that you need to develop yourself in certain and different areas. So it's for me very important that I use automated systems for my marketing
Uh-huh.
and sales, because it's something that is just being the CEO, being the CFO, being the CMO,
Yeah.
what being the CTO, whatever.
Yeah.
It just it helps. It just
Yeah.
it facilitates. It's doing a much better job than I am doing. So I
Uh-huh.
really almost rely on from that point of view from automated system. And there were very good, even free programs that you can enroll, and it just facilitate and helps you be more effective or work more efficient. So those
Is
are
that
the
also
systems.
is that also a matter of knowing your own strengths and weaknesses?
That's a very good question. Yes, exactly what I think what we want to go through is that I understand that not everything is my strength.
Mhm.
And I can just, at certain point, I just want to know and understand why things are happening. But it's also
Mhm.
about letting go and understanding that other people can do a much better job in every area than
Yeah.
I can do, for example. And how I actually work within when I'm asked for a program to deliver
Mhm.
a compliance program or whatever program, I work and take out that ability from the people, their talent, their best capabilities to work together and bring that in a cohesive perspective that we can deliver our end result. So it also means that I have to apply that to myself. Otherwise, I'm just like very
Mhm.
diluted with my energy. And you have me at my best when I'm just like very centered and focused, and just working on whatever I promise to deliver, because I'm very passionate in doing so. So I'm just giving it my all, and that's why I cannot give my all to everything.
Yeah. But is it then also for let's say smaller sized companies important, I guess, to focus on the things that they're good at and not, and then accepting also that they're going to have to rely on automated systems for other jobs, and maybe with a bit less quality, but not being really perfectionist.
So I hear here two things, and I can definitely relate to that. If you're a perfectionist, it's very difficult for you to let go. And then you would
Huh?
immediately say, okay, perhaps that is less quality. But it could also be that because of your perfectionism, you don't see that it's being delivered in a different way. And if we just now segue this into how people look at diversity, this is also a way how people need to look at that there are different talents and different approaches to things, but it doesn't mean that it's not perfect because it's not your level of perfection. So it all has to do with acknowledging that there are differences. And yeah, when you're starting business, of course, you don't have the financial means to have the big expenditures to go for the most expensive program or whatsoever. But still, it brings value to the extent that you can focus and deliver on what is your core competence. And I find that very, very important that you understand that you need to work from your talent, your best capability, and working with others around you, alongside you, to build. So that skills up, that brings momentum, and that helps. So it is, like I said, there are free programs that are very
Huh.
helpful. But it just already takes a lot of pressure out of things that you think that you need to deliver in a certain way, or it should be perfect, and especially during this era, technology is your best friend right now.
Yeah. To what extent do you rely on AI, by the way? Or
And
to what extent do you use it?
I think I use it to amplify things, in the sense that it just sometimes, if I needed to have a very structured, and if I would brainstorm it with others, it just gives me a very structured way of thinking.
Hmm.
I definitely see the value of AI. And when I created my framework, I was in this bubble by creating it with from an AI point of view, saying, okay, if I would just amplify, or to better focus on what is needed, working with AI, but also perhaps working with virtual reality, taking people to the journey from, if you will do this within your business, this will be the end result. So yeah, I'm just, from that perspective, I'm totally embracing this technology within our working ways, or doing so in life.
Yeah, so I want to go back a bit to what you just said about diversity, because you segued into to the diversity and inclusion domain. To what extent do you think, let's say, good inclusion strategy helps you being prepared as a company?
It's a beautiful question, because you see so many companies like struggling with diversity, and
Hmm.
I think it is just naming it as such, being saying, okay, we have, perhaps the approach is not is not the way of doing, saying, oh, we have a problem. I don't think it's a problem. I just need to see you need to understand that you need to embrace different ways of working, different ways of it's, of course, you have your values, of course you have your company values. That should be something that we, for example, if I would apply with you for a business, that's just something that we should have as the common denominator. However, it doesn't mean that how you deliver it would be the same way that I deliver it, but it could be complementary to each other. And that is the difficult way of how people think that they need to work with, either being a diverse country or having inclusion. It is too much labeling, I would say. And the strategy should be more, if we need to be prepared within the business with all the things that are happening, we need to have people, or systems, or mindsets from all kinds of walks of lives, of all kinds
Hmm.
of cultures, or in what actually every label that we have put on it, we should take all the labels out of it and just see everyone from their perspective and what their willingness is to bring to the table. I
Yeah,
would say that would be your best strategy to be prepared also with everything that is happening, with all the different suggestions or opinions and yeah, being just
because
one.
yeah, because that's exactly where I thought it would go. Your answer would go is that it's also because you have much more different types of opinions and lived experiences, and then therefore discussions. Your end results get better, and your level of preparedness goes up.
Yes, I would definitely say that. Just that is so beautifully and perfectly articulated. This is what happens.
So if you look at the current, you're still in the financial and tech landscape. What kind of leadership mindset do modern leaders need to have, other than what we just discussed, being prepared and also looking at it at talent and at people, not from a diversity, from a quota point of view, but from okay, what am I getting out of it point of view?
Yeah, I think it should be a little bit more intuitive. I don't want to say in this, into an extent it should be more feminine, from a feminine perspective, but it should be more focused on building ecosystem. It should be focused on more building communities and and
On
building a level
collaboration.
on collaborations, yeah, partnerships. Exactly. It is not that the short focus is only on creating profits or generating profits. It should
Mhm.
be on more purpose driven. What is our what do we contribute to the society and environment? That should be a more Yeah, that should be more embedded within leadership mindset, thinking, approaching, behaving. I would say that will benefit the future better.
Okay, so let's say I'm of course a man. So let's say I have this perspective. I only care about profit. What am I getting wrong? What am I missing?
Well, I think if that, don't get me
Because
wrong, I'm not, yeah,
finance is about profit and loss.
true, true, of course. So that's why I would say yes, that is a perfect mindset, but combine that with what is your long-term vision? What do you want to contribute to the environment, or what
And
is, or the
to
collaborations or the
society.
partnerships to society? What is your, how do you want to build your ecosystem is in the
Hmm?
dependency on how do you work alongside. So if your focus is only on profit, it will be very single-minded. And yeah, there, of course, there's a market for that. But to my opinion, it would be quite shorter than it would be if you would take all the other elements into consideration, saying, okay, then I'm going to build on partnerships and I'm going to see how my value is being contribute to others within collaborations. So that will be, it will be an added value to your mindset being profitable. So because don't get me wrong, I've written an ebook about being profitable. So I want everyone to be profitable because it helps you build on your financial stability, on your financial independence, and perhaps even your financial freedom and wealth. So yeah, that is definitely something that I advocate. Um, but
How
I
do we
think to
marry
be
the two? How do we translate, let's say, profit and loss into impact?
That's a good question. I think it really has to do with your personal mission. And even apart from your essential your how you
Your
contributing to the society. If your personal mission is that I want to see everyone in a certain way thinking and being have the capabilities and have the accessibilities to be healthy and wealthy and living their best lives, then that is intertwined with your if that's your business, that is intertwined with a very profitable business because you will have your community, you will have your customers, you will have your sales. So
Mhm.
it's it's together, it works
Yeah.
alongside. There's no distinction in that. I think what happens when I said if your mission is solely focused on I want to have I only focused on profit, I think it will take you out of the opportunity to to be a successful entrepreneur over a longer period in time.
So it's much just focusing on profit is also much more short-lived, if I hear
I
you
would say,
correctly.
yeah, I would say if you would only be focused on profit, it will be very short-minded or short-lived life. It will have a very short lifetime trajectory because it's also about how is this being perceived within the market. If you, for example, only focus on profit, if you would dive deeper from a financial perspective in this, is your profit margins of is that allowing you to be profitable over a longer period of time? Because when you have very little profit margins, it will not sustain you for a long period over time. So that's why I say you need to take everything into consideration. Otherwise, it will be very only one sided instead of that being a comprehensive, yeah, interaction with everything that's happened within the market, within you being positioned, with your with serving your client.
So let's do a little thought experiment. You're a female founder. A female founder wants to start building this from the start, marrying, let's say, of impact and on the one hand, profitability on the other hand, which I think is needed to have the impact. How do what are the first three steps or more, if you have, to get started?
Yes. So we can approach this from a very business plan perspective. Then you should have, of course, have right your business plan. What is your audience? What is your product? What is your price? How is your business model? And generate you profits, or at least generate you income. And then at the end, it will be profit. What is your willingness to take risk? Because
Hmm.
I think that's perhaps that should be your first step. You should take into consideration whether you're willing to take a risk, to put yourself out there, to be vulnerable, and to build on something that you believe that is just something that you only know that will be successful because you have seen the light. So yeah, is there a willingness to take a risk and then drill it down into, is it a financial risk that I'm able to take? Is it an operational risk that I can take, a strategic risk that I'm taking right now? And from there on, you can build on your finance, saying, okay, then my business plan would be the following. This is my product. This is the price. This is how I will bring it to the market. This is my audience, and this is the marketing that we're going to perform to drive our traffic and to have our customers. And we will have our third step, that is really, I would say, really building on your personality, and not to the extent that your personality is not well. Don't get me wrong, but just being resilient, being perseverant, being understanding that entrepreneurship can be a very lonely journey at some point, and just working on that, really believing on in yourself, and just focusing on what you want to bring to the world. So have the third step should be investing in your personal development.
Yeah, and also in your personal resilience that you're
Yes.
able to sustain. How do you do that? How do you do that as a person?
So as a person, I've been practicing yoga for many years. So
Uh-huh.
that means that I if there's any turmoil or whatsoever around me, I just try to stay centered, focused on myself. I work with my breathing. That brings me, I can prepare for tough meetings or even a pitch deck. But it gives me the opportunity to understand and observe the room and the audience, the people that I have interactions with. So I'm working with that. I read a lot. I tend to find it in yoga, in walking, in swimming. I haven't played golf in quite a while, but that is just something that I love because obviously it's outside my, yeah. So, but those are the just it is not all. It's just coming back to yourself that helps you being very resilient, because we as human beings are much stronger than we think we are. We can endure
Hmm.
quite a
Yeah.
lot, but it really has to do with understanding why our things are happening, and then stay calm and and stay focused on what is that you want to build. And you're going to encounter setbacks. That is unfortunately what is happening. Not everything. Of course, there are people that are being successful overnight. But it doesn't, 99% of the 100 times, it doesn't work like that. So you need to prepare yourself for
It's
that.
not, yeah, a straight line to success.
No, it's definitely not. And especially also, and when you, for example, work with investors, they perhaps will have like different mindset with regards to revenues and profits. So yeah, you need to understand, are you willing and capable of taking that risk and understanding why they come from their point of view and what it requires from you to bring that to the table. So it should be very much always focused, and coming back to your question, it should be very much focused on, do you understand yourself? Do you know thyself? And from there on, take your appropriate steps and work with bringing and focusing on what you want to bring on to the table.
Does that also help you, let's say, take the right risks, knowing yourself?
Personally, it does. However, of course, you have you have theoretical risk, but at the end of the day, if mitigating risk is understanding your willingness towards risk,
Yeah.
it gives you a much clearer view on how what is like a high risk or what is a low risk. So, but then of course you can still approach it from a most theoretical point of view. For what if, example, if this and this happens, um, yeah, then it really has to do what is your risk averse in this. Just for a normal example, I would always say your normal risk management would be if you would drive your car to work and you will get in your car and your car is not fueled. You could have mitigated that risk by fueling your car and being on time on your work. So that is already mitigating your risk. But that's very practical. But businesses are not behaving differently in the sense that they just look at the market and see what can happen and how I am not financially prepared to encounter this risk. And it impacts my profitability at the end of the day.
Yeah. So staying fueled appropriately is also part of the recipe for success.
Yes, but it is true, but it had still a difference per person. But it has to be, it has to see what is your future focus.
Uh-huh.
You always need to have your future focus and your vision in mind. What is your why actually? Why are you doing this? What is, and from there on, you will categorize your risk um, from a personal perspective, but then also looking to your business, what is needed, because it could also be a very l- high risk not taking risk, especially during a volatile market, because your competitors will do so at the end of the day. What is the risk of risking that, not taking a certain or not making a certain investment?
So I was wondering, let's say it's 2032, 7.5 ish years from now, and you have helped many companies be successful. What has been your impact and why is that important to you?
So going back to my mission, it would be my impact to help people understand their financial or maintain their financial stability and working towards financial freedom, working towards financial wealth, which wealth and freedom are not for everyone defined the same. So I would just stay by being financial stable. Like I said, your business is an extension of you. So it will be very much appreciated if that is profitable, if is that gives you the opportunity and level in life to feel free, to feel
Yeah.
independent, to have a very qualitative life. So that will be something that I find very important for my clients to feel and understand, that with the framework that I designed, that it helps them to be very confident in life, because they understand that they understand their business, they understand why things work as how they work and how they can mitigate elements to be more profitable and to stay profitable over a longer period in time. And why is that important to me? Think no, I know for sure that I find it very important that people can live their lives in a very qualitative manner. Personally, unfortunately, see in a very direct environment that people were really working and living towards their retirement, and after their retirement, they became ill or even unfortunately
Yeah.
died. So that is something that I just want to bring back, in the sense it's not when you're, I'm not even sure what the retirement age is right now. Is it 60, 67, 70? What is it right now?
68, 67, 68. At least
Something like
in the
that.
Netherlands.
In the Netherlands, for example, and then for our Dutch audience, working towards that. No, I want to bring it back. You're now the center. You're in your thriving period. Let's work with that and help you live your most qualitative life from there on.
Sounds like a great place to move to my last question. So I'm on a mission to make inclusion in tech the new normal by the end of 2032. How can I best prepare for that?
Well, understanding that this is such a beautiful movement that you're building, but it's a
Hmm?
difficult one.
Yep.
um, because it has to do with personal beliefs, it has to do with societal beliefs, it has to do with everything in between, apart from accepting that we have differences in life. At the end of the day, if we all put our mindset to it, it will happen. So I think it's all about gathering the right person and the right environment to be seen, to be acknowledged, and from there on build on small steps. I don't think we need to take the big step. What I now see is that people are try to miss or just to oversee or overlook certain steps by just only focusing on the end result. I think we just need to focus on what are the small steps that we can make, and from there on it will ripple out within the community or within the society. It are not the big steps, because then we're still approaching it from a collective point of view. And yeah, I think it has been shown that that doesn't work over
Hmm.
like almost a decade right now. So the approach needs to be different.
So the recommendation is to design a path with small steps that ultimately, of course, do lead to the desired end result.
Yeah, because
Inclusion in
then it will
tech.
true. Then it will take everyone to. It's all about education. It's all also
Uh,
about how.
yeah.
So yeah, you need to take you have to the top of the iceberg, and how do you take people with in change management? It all has theories around it, but it starts with a small group really being effective, showing the results, and then you're
Mhm.
taking people along with you, and then the people feel comfortable, and it will not be like like I said, the common denominator would be, yeah, we're going to deliver the elements that are needed for the business, but it's not that the selection process would be, yeah, but then that person need to look like this, need to behave like this, need to. No, we need to think outside of the box, and then accept that there are differences. But if the end result is the same, the difference doesn't matter. The difference will just vaporize within the whole process, and then we just we're able to bring all these talents and gifts together to bring a much better and create a much better and more inclusive environment.
Sounds like a great place to close. Marleen Somohardjo, thank you very much for an amazing conversation. If people want to learn more about you and M2 Advisory, where can they go?
So your listeners are very welcome to follow me on LinkedIn or approach me on LinkedIn. You can find me on Marleen Somohardjo, obviously. We also have a company page, M2 Advisory. But then we are also on YouTube, where you can find content. And we're going to start soon again our discussion tables, where you can just find the content around finance and discussing with all disciplines how we can bring and see finance more as a business partner than we only see it as reporting or has something that is needed within the business. So yeah, coming back, LinkedIn, you can send me a DM or just follow me, and we have a newsletter where you can sign up, or YouTube where you can find us at M2 Advisory also.
Cool. And we'll include those links in the show notes. So once again, Marleen Somohardjo, thank you very much for a great conversation. Listeners, thank you very much for listening. And until the next episode, keep being awesome. Well, that's it for episode 115 of Women Disrupting Tech with Marleen Somohardjo on how to build a resilient and purpose-driven business. Marleen and I hope that you found our conversation as purposeful and as empowering as we intended it to be. And if you have any questions for Marleen, please leave them in the comments on Spotify, Apple, or YouTube, and I'll make sure you get an answer. When you want to connect with Marleen and or learn more about M2 Advisory, please check out the links in the show notes. As usual, you can find the show notes at womendisruptingtech.blog, and that link is also in the description. If you've enjoyed this episode, please consider leaving a rating or a review on Apple or Spotify. Leaving a rating or a review helps listeners find the podcast and supports my guests by giving them a bigger platform. If you're a regular listener, please make sure to follow Women Disrupting Tech on Spotify, Apple, Amazon, or YouTube. Following is a simple, zero-cost way to support Marleen and my other guests in making inclusion in tech the new normal by the end of 2032. If you want to learn more about Women Disrupting Tech, you can follow the podcast on social media. We're everywhere as at Women Disrupting Tech. We're also on Substack. On Substack, you'll find in-depth stories and behind-the-scenes insights from each episode, plus the trends that I've spotted across 100 plus conversations so far. So don't forget to subscribe to Substack for more Women Disrupting Tech. Finally, if you want to connect with me directly, you can reach me via email dirkjan@womendisruptingtech.blog, or you can connect with me on LinkedIn. Simply search for my name, Dirk-Jan Hupkes, and you'll find me. With that, I wish you a wonderful day. I hope to see you in the next episode, and until then, as always, keep being awesome.